Basically, what this is, I think a lot of people just suck at doing damage as a Frost Mage. They have no idea what they're doing. They don't know when they should use their finger procs. They don't know when they should use their icicles. They don't know how to do damage unless they've been casting for a long time. So that's who this is for. You know what? We'll just get right into it, guys. Here we are at the target dummy. Now, the reason why we're making this video is because a lot of friendly people in my stream have asked me, how do you do damage as a mage? As a Frost Mage in particular. Frost, obviously really strong now. But I do think it can be a little confusing on how you do damage, even though it doesn't have to be. So a lot of people get kind of caught in this mindset that the only way you can do damage is by spamming Frostbolt, and there is some truth to that. Like, your damage output's going to be significantly higher when you press Frostbolt, and there's a few reasons for that. Not only does Frostbolt do a little damage, but it also loads up the shotgun. So you load up your bullets in the shotgun, which are your icicles. It also gives you flurry procs. In addition to that, it gives you Fingers of Frost procs, okay? And that's how you're going to do basically the most damage you can do is you build up your icicles, you build up your Fingers of Frost, and then when you want to burst, you can do, like a Frostbolt into a flurry, into a lance kind of thing. Now, some people will be like, oh, that's not ideal, Ven. That's not the most damage you could do. What you're supposed to do when you have full procs is actually dump your fingers first and then flurry into... So what a lot of people say you should do is if you have all these procs, you should use your fingers first. So you get a big lance, and then you can Frostbolt flurry if you want into lance. And if you cannot cast, then you can just flurry lance. So it's a significant amount of damage. So that's basically like the standard rotation. If you build up all this damage and you want to burst without casting a single spell, once you've built it all up, then you can just do like a lance into a flurry, into a lance, and take advantage of Winter's Chill. Now, the rest of Frost Mage damage, like it's still, a lot of it comes, still kind of surrounds shattering novas, right? So you have a few different tools. Obviously, your pet Freeze is one of them. Your Frost Nova is one of them. Your Ice Nova is one of them. And these are all tools you can use to shatter. And I think one of the things that gets confusing for a lot of mages is you have a lot of cooldown spells, right? Like you have Frozen Orb, you have Comet Storm, you have Ice Nova. Like, when am I supposed to use all of these spells? Now, Comet Storm, Frozen Orb, Ice Nova. I would say Ice Nova and Frozen Orb are both damaging spells, but they also have some utility. Like sometimes you're going to want to use Ice Nova to just kite, and you can like Ice Nova and then follow it up by a lance, right? So a lot of people forget that you can actually shatter a lance from an Ice Nova. So if you're kiting a warrior, you can Ice Nova them into a lance. So you want to take advantage of little things like that, right? If you Nova someone, you can Frostbolt lance them or just lance them. So still just like traditional shatter combos. If you can cast a Frostbolt and you want to burst it, you can Frostbolt Pet Nova lance and then get burst off that way. In terms of Comet Storm, when you're using your Comet Storm, you want to try to pair it with your Ice Nova, or you want to try to pair it with your Freeze or your Nova if you can. But that's going to give you the ideal damage on it. So you can Comet Storm into an Ice Nova, into an Ice Lance, and that'll give you some shatter damage. And then in addition to that, of course, you have a Frozen Orb, which you can drop with concentrated coolness and put out some significant burst. Now, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask and I'll look over. Obviously, we have Ray of Frost as well. Normally, I use Ray of Frost as like a utility if someone's like trying to get out of my line of sight, or I want to snare them a lot, or I just want to build up fingers. It's kind of like, it's one of the things you have to read, right? Like Ray of Frost in and of itself doesn't do that much damage, but it is a good way to get out some quicker damage than just spamming Frostbolt. It's also good for people who are moving out of line of sight, and it also gives you Fingers of Frost procs. So imagine this guy's moving behind the pillar, you're getting some lance procs, and then you can use your lances to follow up that damage. So that's typically when I use Ray of Frost. It's a little bit faster than Frostbolt if I have no icicles and I have no procs. And I can get that out if they have no interrupts. It's also a really, really big snare, so you can use it as that kind of utility. And I think that's one of the confusing things about Frost Mage also is sometimes you actually will use Frozen Orb as just a snare, right? Like a lot of your damage spells are also utility spells. So sometimes you'll actually use Frozen Orb, not for the damage, not for the burst, but just so you can get like snares down instantly and try to like kite away from people. It's the same thing with Ice Nova, right? Like at the beginning of the game, sometimes I'll just run in and Ice Nova a Demon Hunter or a Warrior before they can get to me, and that it slows them down a little bit and lets me do something. So you do end up using some of these spells, even Ray of Frost, as kind of utility. And that's where you kind of have to balance and kind of know all the different situations and when you can actually burst damage. Now, in terms of like gearing and stuff, I really like using unused trinkets as Frost because I feel like Frost, if you're playing twos, or sometimes even like you're playing Rogue Mage, it takes a little time to ramp up, right? Like typically before like a go, if you're playing Rogue Mage, you want to like, or you're playing like Rogue Mage Priest in threes, you want to try to build up some damage, right? Build up your icicles, build up some procs, and once you have full icicles, and once you maybe, you get a flurry proc, flurry is the best proc you can get. But even this, like you could typically burst, right? So at this point, like my rogue's like, okay, I got a kidney, like let's do it. I can drop a frozen orb, I can lance again, I can lance again, I can lance again, I can Comet Storm, I can Ice Nova, I can lance again, I can lance again. So just like making sure that you actually have, some icicles, maybe a proc, maybe a frozen orb, your Comet Storm, your Ice Nova, in between goes. It's kind of similar to how as a fire mage you want to like save meteor for a go, right? Like on a kidney shot, having meteor is going to make you burst significantly harder. So you do have to kind of play around like building up your damage as a frost mage. So you get in this situation, you actually have like some damage you've built up. You can lance with your icicles, you can flurry, you can lance kind of thing. At like the beginning of a game, let's say I'm playing Rogue Mage 2s, right? And I want to play really, really aggressive right in the opener, like we're about to open on someone. Like things you can do, you can just like Veins, Claw, Comet Storm, Ice Nova, drop a Frozen Orb first if you want. That way it has a chance to actually build up Fingers of Frost procs, and then you could Ray of Frost as well, or use like your Reaping Flames. So using all your like cooldown spells, I guess, to like get your go going. Or if you wanted to, you could kind of even separate. Like if there's no chance you're going to be interrupted, then maybe you could hold on to your Claw, then just use like Reaping, Comet Storm, Ice Nova, and then in between the goes. I think another thing people don't realize is as a Frost Mage, you don't necessarily have to be building up your damage on the target you want to hit. I was a little bit like that because as a mage you had Tunnel of Ice. So if you're Tunnel of Ice building up that damage on a target, you did feel incentivized to like spam Frostbolts, but it's not really that way anymore, right? So let's say this is a pet behind the pillar, or this is like a Mistweaver statue that I'm building up damage on, and then we want to make a hard swap on the Mistweaver. So I just go over here, and now we're hard swapping Frostbolt, Flurry, Lance, Flurry, Lance, Comet Storm, Ice Nova, and then they're low, and I reap them. But if you have an Ice Nova, or if you have a Frost Nova, or a Frozen Orb, sorry, quite often it's good to drop early on. That way, not only do you get your Fingers of Frost proc, but it also has a chance to build up more Fingers of Frost procs as you're using your globals on like Comet Storm and Ice Nova and stuff like that. Okay. Now, some other things that, hopefully that's some good information. I don't know if that helps you guys. Let me know. I'm doing this YouTube video live on Twitch, so I'm getting a little bit of feedback. If you guys have any more questions, feel free. But I will say some things that help me also as Mage right now, in pre-patch in particular, is there's a few traits that I like a lot. So one of the traits is Frigid Grasp. So I like playing one Frigid Grasp. And what this does is when you use your Icy Veins, you get a Fingers of Frost proc. So it lets you have more go damage right away. So there's less build up on your damage. Which I think is really, really nice. So not only do you get a free Fingers of Frost when you use your Frozen Orb, but you also get one when you use your Icy Veins. Oh, when do you use your Blizzard? So Blizzard's useful for a few different things, but the main reason, there's a couple main reasons why you drop Blizzard, right? So the main reason you drop Blizzard is because it resets the cooldown on Frozen Orb. So in between your Frozen Orb goes, you can drop a Blizzard. It does a little damage. It's really insignificant, but every time Blizzard hits a target, it takes 1 second off a Frozen Orb. So if you drop a Blizzard on a bunch of pets or people behind the pillar, it just allows you to get your Frozen Orb up more often. So yeah, people are just hiding behind the pillar, drop a Blizzard on them. Even if like there's an Unholy Death Knight and a Warrior training down your healer, drop a Blizzard on them. Obviously, it's going to snare them. But in addition to that, it also is resetting your Frozen Orb, which lets you do a little bit more go damage. How do you burst if you can't get procs from Frostbolt because melee are training you into the ground? So, that's a good question. That's another one of those things, right? Like right now on pre-patch, let's say you can't get any Frostbolt damage off. You can't get any Frostbolt damage off whatsoever. You're just being trained down. It's really, really difficult. If they ever get off you, obviously you want a Frostbolt, but this is when using your Novas to like Lance is important, right? So you can use your Novas to Lance, you can use your Pet Nova to Lance, but if you're trying to play threes and you're doing like a go, then you kind of want to save your Orb, your Comet Storm, and your Ice Nova, and it's basically just about like using your Cone, kiting away, maybe baiting up some interrupts, maybe building up a few procs with Frostbolt, but when you actually can do your go, that's when you're going to want to save if you have Icy Veins, if you have Frozen Orb, your Comet Storm, your Ice Nova, your Reaping. You have a lot of instant damage at your disposal. One of the worst things you can do as a Frost Mage, unless you're playing like a 2v2 situation, if you're playing double DPS versus double DPS, sure, YOLO your damage, but a lot of Frost Mage is like saving and pooling your damage and then having damage available for when you're actually going to do a go. So like, look at that. I managed to cast 3 Frostbolts, and I have Icicles, I have Fingers of Frost procs I can use right now, can Flurry into Lance. That's another one, but if I had melee on me, I couldn't do any damage whatsoever. Let's say I was just 100% relying on my cooldowns. I'm just kiting around. I'm getting interrupted on Frostbolt. And it's like, okay, well, go Hodge the healer. And he goes and Hodges the healer, and we kidney shot the warrior. Then I'm going to drop a Frozen Orb. And I'm going to Comet Storm. And I'm going to Ice Nova. And I'm going to Lance him. And I'm going to Reap him. And that is a lot of damage that you're able to put out. You could even use like a Claw or something like that if you wanted to. But it's just about pooling those instant casts in that moment where you actually need the burst. And yeah, even in threes and like BFA, there was moments. People saw me play threes, and they thought it was really, really weird where I'd hold on to my fingers procs. So there was moments in games where it would look like this, where I would like Frostbolt Flurry, and that's all I would do. And then I would just keep Frostbolting, and I wouldn't use fingers. And the reason for that is because in like threes and stuff like that, instead of just doing overall like scoreboard DPS, first of all, this is a really good way to do damage. But the reason why sometimes I would let my fingers procs fall off is because when we did have crowd control, normally I actually would have fingers available, but when we did have crowd control, I wanted to be able to like hold on to the burst, right? So this is how I was doing consistent damage, and then it was like, okay, my healer actually has a chance to push in. Okay, now is when I unleash my lances and my icicles, because that's going to be the most damage that I can do. Yeah, I don't really do that often anymore, but there is some times where you do want to, like in threes, where you want to hold on to your icicles, because that's going to be like your heaviest hit. Because a lot of the time, it's not about how much overall damage you do. It's about putting the most amount of damage in the shortest window to actually burst someone down with the way threes is. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. But as I was saying, another thing, this Frigid Grass trait is really, really good. So at the beginning of a game, for example, like let's say you're playing Rogue Mage 2s, the healer gets sapped and this guy gets opened on. You can literally just Orb, you can Icy Veins, then you can Lance, you can Comet Storm, you can Ice Nova, you can Lance again, you can use your Ray of Frost, get some procs that way, Lance again, and you held on to your Reaping. You could use Reaping too. You held on to your Trinket, and you basically... Your build-up damage was just using Frozen Orb and using Icy Veins to get like those 2 free finger procs. Because you get one from Frozen Orb, you also get one from using Icy Veins. So that's a great way to just get damage going right away at the beginning. You like Reaping over Conflict? I do. I'm not 100%. I don't know why everyone is going Conflict and Strife. It feels like Netherwind Armor isn't super great. I would way rather just have the burst damage available to either execute someone or even start off a chain with it. I mean, if you can Frostbolt, definitely Frostbolt. But if you get interrupted during your go, because you're greedy going for Frostbolts when you had other damage available, it can be a mistake, right? So a lot of, like, in this situation, like, let's say we're doing a go, and I'm like, okay, well, we got crowd control on the healer, let's try to go for it. I'm going to Lance, and then I'm going to cast a Frostbolt, and then I get interrupted. So I got interrupted, then all of a sudden I can't actually dump my Flurry with Ice Lances, I can't Comet Storm, I can't Ice Nova, so there's definitely times where you want to Frostbolt, but you have to kind of assess the risk versus reward, how many interrupts they have available, is it better to just use instant cast, etc., etc., etc. So, yeah, hopefully that happens, but yeah. And if you are playing Reaping Flames, like during like, because a lot of people are playing like Shadow Priest Mage right now, right? They're playing Shadow Priest Mage, they're playing Rogue Mage in 2s, maybe even playing with a healer, but yeah, just try to use Reaping when they're high health. Try to build Frostbolt when you can to build up damage, and then just be really, really smart about actually, and it literally go to a target dummy. Go to a target dummy, mess around with your procs and how you actually want to get out your burst damage. And yeah, just remember what after you flurry, if you can Frostbolt flurry, you get a free Frostbolt crit, but you always have 2 Winter's Chill stacks as well. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. And also just try to shatter your Comet Storm if you can. And like I said, there's a few ways to do that. You can Comet Storm into an Ice Nova. That's the most traditional way. But you can also like Comet Storm into a Pet Nova, right? So these are both ways to get out more damage from your Comet Storm. And if you can weave in a Lance on that Nova, it's good too. But even just like Frostbolt Nova into a Lance, stuff like that. Just like try to really focus on taking advantage of Flurry procs, your Novas, your Ice Novas, your Pet Novas, and hopefully that helps. If you have any more questions, I mean, feel free to ask, but that's essentially like, that's the basics. I mean, if this is the build you're running, I think it's a really, really solid build overall. Hopefully that was helpful for you actually learning how to do some damage as a Frost Mage, because I know it is really confusing for people, especially if you've been playing a lot of fire. They constantly kick you. Well, I think you just have to realistically accept that you're going to get kicked a lot. In addition to that, you can bait kicks, right? So like if you're playing 3s, go for lots of polymorphs. If they kick polymorph, then you can weave in some frostbolts. But yeah, just try to be good about your damage. Oh, one more thing. Be good with your pet. So having good pet micro is another one. So let's say you're being trained by melee. This is something I think that's very underrated, is a good pet control. So in my opinion, very important to have pet move to bound, pet follow bound, pet attack bound, a pet attack bound, and I like to have my pet on passive. So if your pet's just following you, let's say your pet's following you, you have a warrior and a DK on you, your pet's just going to die. It's not going to do anything, and it's going to die, okay? That's awful, and you lose out on a lot of damage, and if you're doing this, you're wrong. What you should be doing is, you're not doing anything anyways, man. Yeah, like when you're just cone kiting someone, you're not doing anything anyways. Use your pet, move it away from you, kite away from your pet, and have it attack something. So you want to do some consistent damage? Look at your fucking pet. Don't have it just follow you. If your pet's just following you doing nothing, you're wrong. 100%. Okay? Very important. Use your pet, move it around the map. It's like a turret that is going to do some good consistent damage for you. So definitely keep that in mind. And if you're being trained, that's going to be a way for you to actually get out a little bit more damage in a match. Okay? Okay. But yeah, anyways, that's my live Twitch YouTube video. Hopefully you found this video interesting and it helped you out. And if you have any more questions, feel free to ask me. You can come into my stream and ask me. You can leave a comment and ask me. And yeah, all that good stuff. Sweet. Also, yeah, drop a like. You see Pumpkin Wow. He says drop a like on the video. Drop a like on the video. Make sure you ring that bell notification. You know, all the stuff the good YouTubers tell you about.